I'm going to try and stop you getting into your well-rehearsed speech, which I'm sure has some good points, but I guess the question is, personally, do you not support vouchers in health and education?
Our policy's never been vouchers in health, so
I think Roger Douglas in Unfinished Business.
Unfinished business, though, wasn't necessarily a policy now. But that was a while back. No, and if you look at our 20-point plan last time, it wasn't about vouchers. But let's go to education too. I mean, education, I do believe in vouchers I think that we should have choice. The only way that we actually will improve, lift the achievement of our students, is to have parents and students having more say in the type of education they get.
So vouchers to some extent in education, but not in health, is your personal point of view?
I think that there's a lot of things that we should be exploring in health, and what we actually need is a cross-party discussion in health to look to the future. The National Party at the moment are trying to improve the efficiency of the current system. I don't think our current system is sustainable, but I'm not sure that vouchers is the answer to that. I think we actually need to have a much broader discussion about how we fund healthcare, whether it should be the state, whether it should be individuals, or whether it should be a mix for the future.
I guess on an issue like that, you come across as being different from, say, a Labour and National MP, but not that much different.
Well, I'm not in favour of only concentrating on improving the efficiency of the current system, which is where Labour and National stand. What I want to see, I do like the idea of health savings plans. I'm not sure that that's the silver bullet, but I think it's something that we should be exploring because it actually changes the impetus. It means that people are much more responsible for their healthcare. They get to make choices about where they access their healthcare from. In order to do that, I think we actually need a much larger and well-functioning private healthcare system.
Okay. Back to VSM then, the big issue of the day here on campus. Has it been worth it?
Yes.
Okay, and...
Look, it's been a 20-year battle, essentially. We're taking student unions back to where they were as voluntary organisations.
But why do you say 20 years? I mean, you've only been pushing this for the last, what?
Yeah, me personally, but there's an awful lot of people who have been campaigning hard for voluntary student membership over the last 2 decades, and this next Wednesday is going to be a culmination of a lot of hard work that went into things before I was involved. Some people think that it's not worth the candle because it's a very philosophical issue. It actually is a fundamental right, I think, that whether students should have to be forced to belong to an association or not. Don't forget that these are incorporated societies.
I think a lot of people have sympathy for that philosophical point of view, myself included. I have some sympathy for it. But in terms of the pragmatic results, couldn't those results be quite detrimental to students' life on campus, and the fact that...
Well, if you listen to some, yes,
I think there will be a lot of student associations that will fall over and basically become pretty pretty sad states.
I think that it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. I think some student associations will take on board where they are. Some have already started planning, and I actually feel very frustrated at the Labour Party for filibustering as they have and actually assuring student associations and some of the university councils particularly that this bill wouldn't pass, and actually curtailed the planning process. Now, we have already voluntary student membership in Auckland. They haven't fallen over and died a death. They actually, you go to Auckland and it's still a very vibrant campus. So I think it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen. A lot depends on how the student associations themselves respond to communicating with their students, as they're now going to have to do properly.
Okay, James has got something to say.
So we have something here through Twitter from a user OU Liberalius. So they ask, what are your views on the Select Committee submission process, and given those views, did the VSM process make anything you say about that process, I mean, redundant, given that some would say that VSM submitters were basically ignored?
Yeah, no, they weren't ignored, they were heard, and that's what our Select Committee process is about, and I'm a firm believer in it. Ours works much better than many other countries, even those who have the Westminster system. And it's an extraordinarily important part of our democracy, and that's why I don't like the use of urgency, because that process can't happen. No, I don't think my views are redundant because of VSM. I was still a minister when VSM went through the Select Committee process, so I didn't participate myself. So Roger Douglas was still in charge of the bill at that point. What is constantly reeled out by the opponents of VSM is that 98% of submitters were against the bill. Now, if you look carefully at the submissions, there were around 5,000. 300 were were in support of VSM and were very thorough submissions. The rest took the form many of them, about 3/4 of them, of a petition. And so students signed a petition saying they were opposed to it. Now, many of those actually were obtained under what I would consider quite dubious circumstances. And so, but the submissions were heard. The people were given the opportunity to submit verbally as well as in written form, and the process was followed through. At the end of the day, Parliament decides on majority whether they're going to support a piece of legislation or not, and select committee submissions do have an impact on those people, those politicians sitting around the table.
I just want to. I'll go to this question, Nikki, again.
98% is still really dramatic, and why in a democracy like ours, why should it matter if they're in a postcard form or not when it's that overwhelming one side?
I think what we saw, and partly this is looking at things after the event, but they weren't representative of the views of students across the board. There were about 4,000, about 3,500 I think that were in that petition form, but we've got tens of thousands of students countrywide. What strikes me when I go around the campuses is how many students don't actually know that they belong to a student union. They don't realise that they pay a fee to belong to one. And I would say when I visit campuses, it's at least 50-50, if not skewed more the other way, actually opposing compulsory student unionism.
I just wondered if I could talk about your motivations for it all. Because a lot of people would believe, with some, I think, validity, that really your motivations, to not say that you don't believe in these philosophical things, but it's about smashing student unions.
No, it's not at all. It's not at all. I think student unions actually have a very valuable place to play on campuses. What bothers me is that students have to pay a union fee in order to study, and I don't think that's fair. It goes against basic human rights. Nobody else in society is compelled to pay a fee in order to do their work or to study. They shouldn't have to be.
But it does have a look as if this is about getting rid of sort of a hub of I guess Labour Party activism, and I guess Chris Trotter had a good column about it this week, saying that student unions were basically breeding grounds for future Labour Party politicians, and sort of
they've been breeding grounds actually for lots of politicians, including Hillary Calvert from the ACT Party and Peter Dunn.
Sure.
Yeah. But no, my intent isn't to destroy them. I think they provide some very valuable things on campuses, but there have also been some terrible cases of fraudulent activity which shouldn't be tolerated. It's not about destroying them, it's about getting the environment right so that students are free to choose whether they belong or not.
So if you didn't want to destroy them, why didn't you sort of put in like a greater time frame for implementing this? Like say in X amount of years it will be the case, and therefore...
Because I don't think that long time period actually changes anything. Auckland University, when it became voluntary, changed within a month. And they did that reasonably successfully, given that the Student Association didn't fall over. I think that just prolongs the agony. As I said before, I feel very frustrated that Labour, in their filibustering, actually gave student associations the impression it wasn't going to pass at all, and so they shouldn't start planning. They did unions a great disservice by doing that. And I don't think prolonging the agony helps at all. I think that planning needs to happen quickly. Things need to move into the new era, and student associations need to start planning for the future. If you give them a year delay, they think, oh, well, we'll start that 6 months into next year.
Okay. We'll go over to James again, especially if you can give us a commentary on what's being said in the Twitter sphere.
Yep, sure. So we've had a couple of people who've suggested that you're shifting the blame from student associations not being ready from ACT to Labour. So you might want to comment on that. But we also have something through from someone, Sarah Van Bell, and she asks if you have any comments on the strong opposition from OUSA and the university and the DCC on VSM and what OUSA has done to oppose it. Do you have any comments regarding their efforts?
Well, I'm not sure of the comments of all of those organisations like the DCC. I'm not sure what they have said. I think that it was always going to be a philosophical battle where people felt very strongly on both sides, and at the end of the day, my arguments are the ones that have stood. That freedom of choice for students is very important to me, but one thing that I have done is tried to talk to many of the student unions, the organisations themselves, and I've had a lot of dialogue with NZUSA. On the shifting the time frame issue, I invited them several times to actually submit to me concrete reasons for doing so. They sent me a letter last week after the committee stage was finished, so essentially those arguments are useless in that context. But if they really wanted to engage, they had the opportunity to, because I have had a lot of toing and froing with them. But they would probably accuse me of this too, but I think that they were stuck in a particular frame of mind and were unwilling to budge from that.